In the end, I think all creative business is about communication. And I think what we're talking about, I don't think, Hollywood is evil, independent films are, not evil. I think everyone can be evil, everyone can be good. It's about mixes of people. Every job you ever do has a different dynamic to it. And if you can communicate and streamline the communication, or I think we all hanker to achieve collaboration in working together to make great work. If you're talking to each other, which is easier when there's less people in the room. So if you're only talking to 5 people, you can get it done. But if you're having to talk to 50 along the way at different times, it makes communicating a lot harder.
So basically have a clear kind of command structure, perhaps. Just don't hire anybody. Okay. Tiny team. Tiny team. Make your film over 6 years.
No, it's not that. It's just that, like, literally, when we were working on this project and the project I did before that, there was myself, a director, and when it came to the editing, we had a great editor. Who else do you need? I mean, you've shot the film. You obviously need a crew, when you're shooting the film. But when it gets to those decisions, you've got to, certainly as producers, you've got to create structures. If you want to save money, you've got to create structures where you've got nobody coming in with 3 different opposing sets of notes. I mean, it's going to be a disaster. If you've got somebody you can trust, or one executive within your financing body that you can talk to, that's clever, that you feel is a good sounding board, that's great. But to have 3 or 4 of them, I've been in experiences like that. It's a complete and utter waste of time and money. It becomes political. You're placating people. And there's a lot of this politics stuff that goes on. And American film production is famous for it, just because there's so many of them. But Will makes a very good point. If you've got 3 people making the decisions, we had situations on this where we had an episode or 2, well, the last 2 episodes came in at double what we had permitted once we had it costed up after being cut, at double for the visual effects. Will came over, JC came over, sat in the office in the edit suite with myself and Toby, and we went through every single effects shot, and it took us 2 days, and we found a way in the end. When I'm taking on a production designer, a costume designer, makeup designer, we get them on as soon as we possibly can, and we start doing page turns with the script around a table. Your VFX supervisor and company need to be at that table. The idea that you're going to hire them halfway through production, that they're an afterthought, is, well, firstly, it's insane. Secondly, if you're doing an independent film, it's impossible. So you can't do it that way.
I think it's very interesting because when talking about communication, all the rest of it, if you ask a visual effects artist to make you, I don't know, can you make me somebody out of porcelain who collapses? They will probably bid and quote you and discuss ways of doing it in the most proper way they can think of, top level way. Now, we can still make that happen for half the price or less if we compromise, and it can still look good and it can still tell the story. But in order to get to that point, we actually really have to sit down and say, what do you want to see with the editor, director, how long will it be on screen for? Well, if we do this, we can make it happen. And that's very collaborative. If you work in isolation and somebody emails you, how much for this? You're going to give them a big price for doing it properly and covering yourself and all this sort of stuff. So communicating and discussing what do you want to see. And I have to add to this conversation when using visual effects. Visual effects, for some reason, happen to be very subjective. What one person likes and what another person doesn't like is often down to a matter of taste. Whereas when you're on set and you're approving, in a period drama, a lady's hair, there's nothing really subjective about it because you either like it and you're going to turn over on it or you're not. And yet later on in digital computer land, everybody's take on something, everyone's imagination when they're reading a script or watching an edit, and even getting a briefing with tight communication, there are subtle differences of subjective tastes that actually at some point you just really need to have that streamlined system of, I like that.
I do think it's important not to undersell the cost of VFX, because I've quoted on jobs before, and I like you say, genuinely try to give the most honest answer as to how long something will take. But I've quite often got someone come back to me and go, oh, well, how about for this much? And well, it's always a very difficult situation because you want, well, no, I'm not trying to cheat you. This is how much this will cost. And the reason why the larger films do have more visual effects is it's not cheap. So I think there's an honesty that is often slightly overlooked because everyone wants to get, a bargain price. I mean,
gone are the days 10 years ago where someone would be saying, they'd call you up and they'd say, I've got this film and can you bid it? And I put 100,000 in for visual effects. And you'd say, why didn't you call me 3 months ago and send me the script? And I could have told you how much it might cost, because it might be 300,000. How did you come to the figure of 100,000? And they'd go, well, I just put my finger in the air, and I know what the costumes cost, and I know how much the camera is, and I know we're going to be shooting in Lithuania for 3 months, and I know what that's cost. I've had a quote for that. So it was a mixture of a finger in the air and what I had left. But we all know producers particularly can move money around and have discussions and even rewrite sections of script to make things work with the writer. So that early, again, that planning, that discussion, we have moved on from there. And then you're talking about economics and competition and what's in it for somebody and getting things done. So I don't know. It is reassuringly expensive, though. You're right.